Good afternoon. I'm so used to saying good morning on Meet the Experts. We would do these live streams at 11 a.m. and today we're doing a 1 p.m. This is another live episode of Meet the Experts. This is our 53rd episode. It's only the second one we've done in the last month or two due to some extra work that we've brought in at our company, JVI Mobile Marketing. I am Jay Vix. If you've never tuned in to Meet the Experts or never saw this, what is it? Very simply, this is a platform that we use to interview business owners and let them tell their story. Talk about who they are, what they do, what makes them special, what makes them unique, and then we give them the video as a way to provide them with some video content in a really nice, easy manner. And it allows us to meet lots of business owners, connect and make new friends, referral partners, build relationships. So it's a win-win for everybody. Our digital marketing agency has just celebrated 11 years in business. And so far, this Meet the Experts I call it the anti-podcast. Our show has been the most rewarding networking and relationship building exercise that we've done in our 11 years in business. So without further ado, and we have been doing some recorded episodes lately, pre-recorded, and then we run them live. Today is truly live on June 6th. And looking forward to having some people join us here. And if you do have a question or a comment for today's guest, you can put it right in the comment box, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching. We'll be happy to put some nice comments or questions up for our guest, Bill Flynn, who's I'm about to bring up. Bill is described as a pragmatic Simon Sinek, an optimist and an operator. He is a business coach. He's also a best-selling author, which I thought was very cool to see. And once he even pitched Steve Jobs. So we're going to have to ask him about that. That's pretty cool. But without further ado, let me bring Bill up and we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Bill. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jay. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this interview. It's like I was telling you pre-show, I feel like a little out of practice now. It's been a couple of months since I've gone live. So, but we're going to get through this just fine and we're going to have a good time. So I'm really excited. So tell everybody a little bit about who you are and some of the things that you do.
Sure. So I've sort of had two arcs to my career. For the first part of it, I was a startup guy here in the Boston area. I did 10 startups over about 25 years. Decent track record. I was either 5 for 10 or 5 for 7, depending on how you count my contribution. 5 for 7 sounds better, but I did 10 of them. The first 5 or 6 were great. I was actually 5 for 6, IPOs, acquisitions. I had been through 2 IPOs and 7 acquisitions over that time frame. And the last 4, not so good. So lots of learnings from that. And then I transitioned to become what some call a business growth coach or a business coach, as opposed to an executive coach or life coach, personal coach, whatever you want to call it. I work with leadership teams that are looking to grow their business in a healthy and thriving way, and their teams in that way. So I work with them and teach them a growth framework over about 1.5 to 2 years. And then I'm able to, I sort of say, you don't need me anymore, but if I continue to add value and, what I teach them basically is 101 and 201, but there's still 301 and 401, 501, masters and PhD stuff. So some of my clients stick with me for years.
I think that's awesome. I think it's very needed. And I think there have been some entrance into that marketplace over the last 5-10 years, which proves that there's a need for it, right? There's a demand for it. If people start doing things, then typically there's obviously a need. If nobody wanted it, they wouldn't be growing like it has. And I know of a few, some books and some programs that are kind of scaling types of coaching and programs. And I think that's really, really cool. So kudos on that too. And as a baseball fan, I know we talked on our pre-interview sound check. We're probably not going to talk baseball today because I'm a Yankees guy and I know you're up in Boston, so we'll leave that to the side. But But you did, but I think the way you described the successes of your startups, even going 5 for your first 6, I mean, that's a heck of a batting average. That's really solid. I mean, I can imagine that, you kind of felt like, wow, I'm indestructible up here. And then if you have those failures, which I think teach us so much more, right? That it was probably maybe even better for you. You might have learned a lot on the failures than the successes. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm actually a bit of, I have a very specific opinion about that. I think that you can learn from failure. But generally what happens is you learn how not to fail. But I think you learn much more from success. But either way, you should reflect on whatever it is, because success teaches you something about how that works, where failure shows you something that doesn't work. It doesn't necessarily show you how to be excellent at something. It just shows you what you shouldn't do next time. Both are useful, because each adds velocity to what you're doing. But when I work with my clients, I'm a Pareto principle guy. I love the 80-20 rule. And if you apply it to business, it is everywhere. And, I work hard to get my clients to think about the few things that really matter the most in the business and focus on those and not worry so much about fixing the problems all the time. I would say you certainly have to fix the problem, but you have to fix the problem that caused the problem as well. And if you keep doing that, you'll get better and better at what you do.
I'm so glad you said that. I actually needed to hear that today. So that was really something personally that I think really helped me. Yeah. All right. I've got to kind of pivot before we get too deep into this. In your bio, as we were talking, you pitched Steve Jobs. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. Yeah, it was early on in my career. I was at a company called Dragon Systems, which was one of the first speech recognition companies around. It doesn't exist anymore. It was actually a lot of the folks that were there went on and created Siri. And I was, my territory was the West Coast. I was up and down 101 in California all the time. Probably 5 or 10 times a year, I'd go up and down and visit, hardware manufacturers and soundboard people and software companies, etc. And I got a meeting at Next, early on. So it was probably in 94, 95. I can't really remember what year it was. And I just meeting with product management folks. And so I walked into the Next offices. I get set up in the conference room, and they sort of poked their head in and said, hey, we'll be here in a minute. Steve might join us. And at this point, I'm like, who's Steve? It didn't dawn on me at all because, like, did I meet some Steve in an email, and who's Steve, and should I know who Steve is? And so, yeah, about 10 minutes later, Steve Jobs walks in the room and sits down and says, show me what you got. So, we talked for about 20 minutes. I gave him a demo of the product. He asked a bunch of questions, and it was interesting. And I think it was probably better that I didn't realize who it was, because it may have been even in the 90s, he was certainly well known. And I actually had family and friends that worked at Apple, in the 80s. So I knew of him and of his reputation. I probably would have been a bit more intimidated than I should have been with him just sort of surprising me like that. But nothing came of it. They never used our stuff. But it was certainly, I get to tell the story, which is now 20 some odd years later.
That's a legendary story. Like how many people can say that? You're very, very few people can say that they got to pitch Steve Jobs. I think that was really, really cool. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I got to ask him. So, well, cool. So changing back to kind of what you're doing now, everybody has, every business owner we speak with, they have products or services. So tell us a little bit about some of your main products and services and kind of who they help. Who are they targeted for? Who's your best audience?
Yeah, so I do really 3 things, but one mainly is this growth framework. I work with the CEO or the business owner or whomever I call head of company, and with their team, and we work over over a couple of years, maybe more, and we work on a business growth framework, which primarily focuses on 3 main things. That is team as the main part of sort of the people side. My first, you said you were familiar with some growth frameworks. So my first certification was at Scaling Up, which or Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which has been around for about 30 years. That's one of the more famous ones. And they do people, strategy, execution, and cash. And I kind of like that framework. I've modified it a little bit because I don't think it's just about individual people. I think teams are the most impactful. You and I sort of work by ourselves mostly, but I've worked in an organization, and teams get almost everything done, right? It's very rare that one person gets something done of any significance or contribution to the organization. And we're not very good at attracting the right people, at crafting the team and building the team. We had never really been taught how to do that. So I spent a lot of time teaching folks how to do that and make sure that the team is a cohesive team, so they fight in a healthy way. Then I work on a systematic approach, which is really focusing mostly on that strategy and execution part from the Scaling Up side. And what I found is strategy and execution are connected inexorably and inextricably. Is that you're executing your strategy. So you have to make sure that you have a strategy that is understood, and then you're executing on it, and then you're sort of this never-ending circle of working on a strategy, finding out where it's weak, improving it, and getting better and better and better at it. And especially as things externally to the company change, be it technology or demographics or whatever, you then have to modify your application of the strategy to address that. And then lastly, I'm a 30-year sales guy, and I've come to the altar of cash. And if you want to grow your company, it's not about revenue. It's not even about profit. Revenue is a vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king, right? Cash will never lie to you on your balance sheet. You can make up profit. You can pay yourself less. You can move money around. You can do all sorts of stuff and say you're profitable. But the real test is if we're actually going to buy you, they're going to look at what's the value of the organization. If you're paying yourself below market rate, they're going to take that off the business, right? Because they're saying, look, your EBITDA isn't where you think it is. It's, you're not as healthy as you are. So I focus on those things: team, systematic, execution and strategy, and then cash. So that's sort of my main thing that I do now.
I love that. I think that's kind of like for the business owner that's been around a couple of years and kind of grasps the different areas of business that they need to scale or systemize. I think it's really probably critical. Do you find yourself working with business owners who have or teams that have been around, more veteran teams, or do you think that startups? You find a lot of startups that maybe just kind of go right into this thinking they get off to that good start? Like, when do you become aware that these are the things that you need to focus on?
Yeah, so startups are different than scale-ups, right? Or lifestyle companies. There's sort of three categories that I put people in. And I love Steve Blank's definition of startup. Steve Blank is sort of is known as the godfather of startups. He's a professor at University of California, Berkeley. He did 8 startups of his own. He's written a bunch of books on it. I highly recommend that you do not read his books. They're really hard to read, but video of him is great. He's a great speaker and presenter, but he writes like a professor, which I don't really enjoy too much. The books could be about half the size, I think, than they need to be, but it's great stuff. And he says that startups are temporary organizations in search of a business model. And when I get asked advice, I have been asked advice often from founders since I've done so many. They say, what would you tell me to do? And my advice is always the same: is your job, all this other stuff you're learning about strategy, don't even worry about it. You're trying to solve a problem worth solving. First, you're trying to find a problem that's worth solving, and then solving it in a way that people will actually pay you money for. And then the other thing I say is don't run out of money. Those are the only 2 things that you have to worry about until you figure out that you've got something that's repeatable and scalable. Then you can either decide this is a lifestyle company where I want to just sort of make a living from it, and that's good, or you want to scale the company, and then it's a whole different thing. And that's where I would come in with my framework. When you get through the product market fit knothole, and you have to go revisit all those critical decisions that you made in the startup world, which some of them you have to undo because you were sort of in desperation mode or creative mode, if you will. And some of those decisions that you made were not good ones for the long term. They were good in the short term. And that's where the strategy and execution, like for instance, your team, the team that got you through this product market fit knothole isn't necessarily the team that's going to get you to, $100 million. They love doing the scrappy stuff. They don't want to do the repeatable, boring, routine stuff of scaling, because that's what it is. It's a repeatable process, right? That scales. So,
Interesting.
so that's sort of what that's sort of what I see the difference between the two.
Oh, I'd probably have to be a whole different episode or a different conversation or a different podcast. But I could probably go so many levels deep with you on that question, or that statement there about the teams, and how different the teams need to be, depending on where you're trying to go. That's
Yes.
mind blowing in my head right now, thinking about where I'm at 11 years and what we're seeing in our business, and just thinking about, the changes and the positions that we're filling now, and are they right? So anyway, I digress. I don't want to get too far off topic, but you really just planted a seed in my head. So, hey, Bill, so tell me, I believe every business, I know in mine, I can talk about this, but at some point, somebody has had to share a win that you've produced for them or helped them produce, or a testimonial that somebody just said to you that just kind of sticks with you. It's like it gets you up in the morning and you're like, I know I made this difference in this person or this company's future. Do you have one of those that you can share?
Sure, I got a few of those, but the one I think is most memorable to me, and you'll notice I like pithy, is one of the clients that I'd worked with over several years, and then they've subsequently sold their company. The CFO, who are always the most difficult, and skeptical of all the folks usually in the room, said this of me once, and I actually put it on my website. I said, Eric, can I take that and put it on my website? And he said, sure. He said that Bill is the most value per word than any other consultant or coach we've ever worked with. I just thought was pretty cool, right? So, I'm about being simple, right? It's the simple businesses are the ones that endure and thrive. And I try to be economical in my language as well, and try to get to the essence of things. That's also generally how my brain works. So that was nice to see that was actually being recognized and useful to someone else.
That's really cool. I like simple. As a media buyer over the years, I've had a lot of people that want to come up with very elaborate, creative types of campaigns. And what I've always found is that the simple ones, if we can just keep it basic, always seem to perform better than the ones that we're trying to invest all this time and money into. So I agree with simple. I love that. Earned it, learned it, proved your authority. Any titles, certifications, things you've worked really hard to achieve that now help you in your job, or maybe they don't. Maybe you just like to talk about them.
Yeah, so definitely have helped me in my job. So I'm a multi-certified growth coach. I've been through a bunch of certification programs, including scaling up and something called metronome systems. I'm also a neuroscience geek, so I have a certificate from the Neuro Leadership Institute, certificate with distinction, I might add, and whatever that means, but it sounds good. I'm also a predictive index certified partner from a behavior assessment perspective. And I recently went through the Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder centered coaching model and got certified in that. So I've been through a bunch of stuff. I like learning. I'm not big on collecting. I have a lot of my peers who just love to go to training courses, etc. And again, back to simple, I like to learn stuff, but have it really be focused on certain aspects of my business.
Certainly. I'm cut from the same cloth. I'm a lifelong learner. I like to learn these new things. The certificates are nice, but I'm fascinated by so many things. I'm like, oh, let me take this course on this and learn a little more about it. Or, if certifications are there, great. But I agree. I think that's really cool. So it sounds like you're like me in that regard, that you want to pick up the knowledge as you can and then see how it can relate to what you're doing. Right.
Exactly.
Cool. So this is where I'm going to change gears. We got a couple questions left. And this can be personal, professional, whatever you decide. But I like to ask all my guests, because I think it means a lot just for people to hear this as a business owner. What is something you're thankful for?
Yeah, I say this to my clients is so we often, when I have some sort of rituals or traditions that I do to end a meeting, and one of them is we do appreciations. I have everyone do an appreciation. They can do someone in the room, or you can do someone that's not in the room. And I say, obviously if the person's in the room, they can hear it and absorb it. If they're not in the room, then they have to promise to, as soon as the meeting ends, they're going to either send a note or leave a voicemail or something saying what they said about the person to the other team members. And mine often is, the work that I do is I would consider it to be intimate. We're not just doing business stuff. We're getting into relationships and personal stuff as part of, how we work together as teams, because teams that work well together see each other as human beings first, and workmates second. And so when you bring that into the process, I hear a lot of things, right? And I'm privy to a lot of private information that I get. So I'm thankful for that trust that my clients give me, and the chance to help them do some things that make the lives of not their lives better, but it sort of has a ripple effect, because if your business starts to work better and you have more velocity and it's easier to work, then you're less stressful, which affects the people around you at work. It also affects your family and friends, and it has this wonderful ripple effect. So I'm thankful that I get to do this, and I hope I get to do it for another 10 or 15 years.
Love that. I hope you do too. Got one final question, and sometimes this is the longest question of the whole show. But I do want to point out that at the bottom of the screen, we have a little bit more information that Bill is with Catalyst Growth Advisors. He helps humble, hungry leaders take the guesswork out of growth. I'm reading too fast, by teaching them a proven growth framework. So you can visit Bill at www.catalystgrowthadvisors.com. And I would encourage everyone to go and check out the website, especially if you're looking to take your business to the next level and learn a little bit more, and maybe book a consult or a meeting, right? Is that something they can do on the website?
Absolutely. Yeah, my calendar link is on there, so you can book some time.
Perfect. So I would encourage business owners that might see this to do that. One final question. There's a reason companies put FAQs on their website. They get the same question over and over and over and over again. And it's like, hey, if we can just answer it, let's answer it. I like to give business owners a chance to answer that question on video. And maybe if that's the only thing you take from the episode is you put a video on your FAQ section, because everybody asks it anyway. What are some of those questions that most potential customers may ask?
Of me as a coach?
Yeah, just something when they're maybe in the decision process, or maybe even an objection that they come up with that you've had to overcome often.
Yeah, so I probably get a couple of them most often, and they're kind of basic questions, mostly because coaching is this sort of amorphous thing, right? Is what is that? And it's sort of you transverse or you go from sort of advisor, director to coach, which is really sort of this person who's helping you answer questions as opposed to giving you answers or direction. So they kind of want to know, like, what am I getting myself into? Like, what is, how does this thing work? And what I do is I learned this from a woman by the name of Shannon Susko, and I take the process and I do it in the metaphor of a house, right? And the house is basically, how you build a business, and it starts with the foundation, and that's really about culture. And then the framework, that goes around that is around really mostly about people. Sort of the structure itself and the foundation is all about people, be it, the cohesive leadership team, and then how you hire A players, and then how you work with the rest of the team. And like any other house, you have to run the house, right? You have to have plumbing and air conditioning and heating and appliances and food and all that kind of stuff. And inside your business are three other systems, which are the strategy and execution system, which we talked about. And then if you do that well, strategy is about top line, execution is about bottom line, and then cash is what's derived from that, right? If you do that well, you're driving cash into the business. And then I say, look, you can build a great house, but if it's not on, even if you have a strong foundation, but if it's not on solid ground, like here in New England, we have mostly bedrock and granite that's underneath. But in many parts of the country, you don't. You have soil. You have to test the soil first. So you have to make sure you have that really good sound foundational system, which is really about your vision. People say, what's it take to be a leader? And there's all of these, words and attributes and things. And I've come to believe that leadership is super simple. And it's really not a true thing that you can define as, if you do these things, then you're a leader. But there are two things that I've found that are pretty consistent. One is that leaders really create followers. If you're a leader, you create followers. You can be a boss or an authority and you can have people report to you. That doesn't mean you're a leader. Leadership is a voluntary act. People choose you as their leader. You can't proclaim that you're the leader, right? And then the last thing, and they basically want to know where we're going. So having that vision, right? And that's what usually attracts them. There's something about you or what you're doing that attracts them. And then the only other attribute I've seen, which is pretty consistent, is you have to have courage. Leaders have courage because your vision is often going to be poo-pooed and told isn't right. And you have to sort of have the courage to do that. You have the courage eventually when you grow to give away your vision to other people and let them help you. And that's difficult for people. So those are the only two things that I've really sort of seen from that. So they want to know, how does this thing work? And then lastly is, what do I have to do? I have had clients not work with me. I had one client who told me this outright. It took 2 years for him to start to work with me. And I said, and I've known him for years. And I said, Dimitri, why did it take so long? And he said, I know that you're going to make me do things that I didn't want to do. And I had to be ready to do it. It was going to be hard, etc. And I said, yeah, this is not for the faint of heart. If you want to really build your business and have it be scalable and repeatable, you have to put a lot of energy and effort into very fundamental basic things, which is mostly about thinking about the business versus doing. And this is sort of that adage, how much time you spend in the business versus on the business. And, that's what I say is we're going to spend a lot more time looking at the business as a product itself and optimizing that as if you were going to sell it. You don't have to sell it, but if you create it as if you're going to sell it and sell it for the optimal amount, you do these things. And these are the kind of companies that do this really well, that endure and thrive. And if they do sell, they sell for the highest amount of EBITDA they can. So that's the two things.
Whew. That's awesome. You got me fired up today. Just thinking in terms of my business, and I know any business owner watching this, you've given them so much cool stuff to think about. I love what you just said on leadership. It's true, and I've thought about it many times as far as the difference between just like the authority figure versus a true leader, and really just eye-opening stuff. I do appreciate you coming on. I would encourage everybody to check out catalystgrowthadvisors.com. Bill, again, thank you for coming on Meet the Experts. This has been a great episode, and exactly what I told you, 25 to 30 minutes, perfect length, perfect episode. So hang out backstage. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to you now, but thanks again for coming on.
Great. Thanks for having me on. And by the way, everything I talked about here is in my book, Further Faster, if people want to pick it up. They can get it for free on my website if they want.
I meant to talk about the book too today. Further Faster.
We kind of did already.
Flynn.
So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So awesome. So we'll also tell people to go get the book, and that is one that I definitely want to pick up as well. Bill,
Great.
hang
Thanks,
out.
man.
I'll be with you in a few minutes, but thanks for coming on. All right, that was awesome. Bill's gonna wait backstage, and we'll chat with him there. Just had a great comment come in. Also, I know Bill can still hear me from backstage. Business owner that I know very well here in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, Mark Padal. Thank you for saying thank you, Bill. Great job. So thanks, Mark, for that. And it was always great to get some comments as we're doing the episodes, and caught that one a little bit late today. So switching the ticker at the bottom, if you would like to be a future guest on Meet the Experts, it costs you nothing. Like, I just love to build our network, grow our network, meet some referral partners, grow businesses together. Who knows? Maybe I'll meet somebody later today that I'm like, you got to talk to Bill Flynn, right? And send them over to the website. We love giving referrals. We love getting referrals. Who doesn't? It's a fact of business. But if you want to be a guest on Meet the Experts, it's an easy way for you to get some video content for your business. So many business owners have a hard time with video content. They don't want to take their phone out and record that selfie video, or maybe they just don't feel like they have the right lights or what to say, or they need a script, or they're just uncomfortable, right? This is a really cool, easy way to get some video that you can use on your website, on your social media, in any way. If you want to know more, Ask me how, but you can also go read more about what comes with the interview. It's www.meettheexpertspodcast.com. Go to that page, read all about it. And if you want to be a guest, you just go ahead and apply right there, and we'll have you on the show. And then we'll give you the video when it's all done. So until next time, which we have about 5 episodes that are in this booking process right now. So we got a bunch of episodes that we're getting ready to gearing up to have over the next couple of months throughout the summer. Until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe summer. We'll see you on the next episode.